Olá a todas e todos, sejam bem-vindas, bem-vindos a mais uma conversa com os editores organizada pela Compós. Então, eu fico particularmente agradecida pelo convite que me foi feito para moderar essa conversa. Eu sou Isabele Mitozo, professora do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Comunicação da Universidade Federal do Maranhão, no campus de Imperatriz. Então, gostaria de parabenizar a Compós, agradecer a Compós, ao Rafael Roman, pela organização desse evento, dessas edições que são muito importantes. Eu, como ex-editora de revista acadêmica no Brasil, fico particularmente interessada por essa discussão e fico muito feliz de ter sido convidada para ser a mediadora desta conversa. Então, como todas as outras, nós teremos hoje um participante internacional e um participante brasileiro, editores de revistas, e eu tenho certeza de que vai ser uma conversa muito interessante, muito frutífera e que vocês podem acompanhar aí com bastante interesse. Já aviso que vocês podem, de antemão, vocês podem mandar suas perguntas em português ou em inglês, que nós vamos fazer aos nossos convidados. E agora eu vou mudar um pouco de língua para receber o nosso convidado internacional e o nosso convidado nacional por um momento. So we have here today two editors of journals, one from Asia, another one from Brazil. The first one is Dr. Peng. He's currently the editor-in-chief of the Asian Journal of Communication and professor of communication at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, Peng. Feel welcome here. And our second invitee is Dr. Richard Romancini. He's a managing editor of the Brazilian journal MATRIZes and assistant professor of communication at the University of São Paulo. So thank you very much, Richard, for being with us today. And as we want to talk as soon as possible about what you have to tell us, I'm really anxious about that. So let's start talking about the journals both of you edit, their publication policies, and the challenges you've been facing, especially concerning the internationalization of our production, we that are far from the mainstream world of academic publication. So could we start by you, Mr. Eng, please?
Okay, sure. Okay, so good evening. Oh, sorry, good evening my time, and good morning your time, I'm sorry, yeah. And I again apologize for the mess in my room. This is my work room. You see I'm working from home. I just got some package that came from China, this right there, yeah, right. So the Asian Journal of Communication is now in its 30th year, and this is the 30th year. I forgot it was the 30th year, that bad. So I'll do something next year. The journal was started by my former boss, Professor Eddie Kuo, who founded my school. And we are quite new in communication. So as you probably know, Singapore ranks very low on the freedom rankings, press freedom rankings, because of the laws. And in fact, for a while, there was a lot of skepticism about whether we could teach journalism or not. So, for example, when Professor Eric Wong, as the head of the school then, when he went to the USA to look for exchange programs, one dean, and I will not mention which school, made him wait for an hour and then told him that he will not see him because you're from Singapore, you censor the press. But things have changed a lot, and you probably know something called the WJEC, the World Journalism Education Congress. That was an idea for a curriculum, model curriculum in journalism that was launched with the help of my then colleague, Indrajit Banerjee, who later on went to UNESCO as one of the directors there, and in fact became one of the head of the group of directors just below the General Secretary General then. It was this idea, this Indrajit Banerjee idea, to have a modeled curriculum for journalism, and that meeting was launched in Singapore 2007, and it's since carried on just about every year. So the organization that was doing this, Asian Media Information Communication Center, was the one that co-founded the journal. So the Asian Journal of Communication was co-founded by my former boss, Eddie Kuo, who is now emeritus, as well as somebody from the Asian Media Information Communication Center. And they did this on this. The journal came out just twice a year, and now we have it every other month. So 6 issues a year now from 2 issues a year. The idea of the Asian Journal of Communication, so founded by my school as well as an NGO in communication training, was to give an Asian voice in communication. So you know, and you're in Brazil, you will know that a lot of the theories are from the West. And I don't know if you know this, but there's this thing called the WEIRD, 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 because you say weird scholarship. Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies, WEIRD. So you will see a lot of the research in the US done on second-year students and often in psychology. So a lot of theories that we have from the West are actually based on second-year psychology students from America. And now there's a question going on as to what extent these are actually valid theories. The Asian Journal of Communication was started with a grand idea of sort of looking at some of these issues to see to what extent they apply to Asia. But having said that, what we have found is that we are actually using you could say the Western mode of thinking in terms of the approach to publication. So let me talk a bit about this. So in academic publishing, the most prestigious journals publish academic works, which are works that talk about theories. If you do a study on let's say on Brazilian, let's say look at a study on the Brazilian media landscape or Asian media landscape, this will be a practical study. It would not go into a top-tier journal with a lot of citations. The Asian Journal of Communication, where I'm now the editor, we are moving in that direction. We are looking at publishing serious academic works with focus on theory. If your paper does not have a focus on theory, your paper will not be published in our journal. And I've discussed this with my associate editors, and this is our conclusion. We receive now about 400 manuscripts a year, and it's common, I think you will know, 400 manuscripts a year. Assuming you publish 6 articles in one issue, there are 6 issues in a year, you can only publish 36 articles out of 400, right? So you need some way to screen a lot of the articles out. And so the focus on theory is one of them. The other one is that we look at Asia. So we've had manuscripts from Africa is definitely out. Middle East, for a while, I actually threw out some manuscripts. But after talking to people, well, Middle East, Israel is part of Asia as well. So we are kind of back. Turkey, in between. Turkey is partly Asia, partly Europe. We said, okay, never mind. Partly Asia, so okay, we'll take it. So the focus on the region of Asia. And now, I don't know if you're asking, like, are there theories that apply in the West but do not apply in Asia? So let me give you one. I guess, because we're in communication, you would know, you may have heard of agenda setting, right? Agenda setting is the idea that the press sets some important issues, and then the public will then discuss it. So in a way, it sets the agenda. It doesn't tell the public what to think, but tells the public what to talk about or think about. Well, they did a study in Singapore, 1991 election, and they found that the agenda of the press and the agenda of the public did not match. It was like this, right? And the conclusion was that it was because of censorship in Singapore. So the press was censored, and therefore what the press said was maybe what the government wanted them to say, but the issues were not important to the public. So your coffee shop talk was not the same as the agenda from the press. So if you look at content analysis, you find that it's quite different. This study, I guess it didn't take up much steam, but it since appeared in some recent article I was reading, the conference ICA, Conference International Communication Association conference, and they found this. So what this means is that the agenda setting theory has to be qualified. It does not work where there is censorship of the press. Now you may think, well, it's kind of obvious, like, yeah, but it's a refinement to the theory. So this is one example of the difference in theories that has been refined. I mean, one that comes to mind for me readily when you talk about the Asian communication perspective. There was also a talk, if you remember, some time ago now, and under my then Prime Minister, and became Senior Minister Lee Kuan Yew. He was talking about Asian values in sort of generally, but talking about Asian values in the media. For example, maybe we're more sensitive to sort of religious hate speech, right? We found, for example, that there isn't this Asian values in journalism. The values in journalism are pretty similar across. Yes, the differences, for example, in how you may treat hate speech, what is considered hate speech. Like, I mean, in Singapore, we would not consider Nazi symbol to be very serious, right? Which is why there was a story a few years ago where the Nazi symbol, the swastika, was used, and people were like, "Oh, it's bad," but there was no history of mass murder in Thailand because of the swastika. So there's some differences that way, but we didn't see your so-called Asian values. So you could say in some ways we are trying to feel our way around. There isn't a kind of firm Asian versus Western notion of what is communication or how is different, but we are looking for some ways in which either the theories or the findings are slightly different because of culture or some contextual issues there. I will say that for a regional journal, and we find this to be true, the regional journal tends to be less cited, because if you look at a journal, let's say I have a former colleague who's now retired, Rich Ling. He had this mobile communication journal. The journal is very young; it's just a few years old, but its impact factor, right, citation of the journal was very high. I think in the first 1 or 2 years, it hit 4. My own journal hit 2 just recently. Before that, it was 1 point something or below 1, right? I mean, the joke among us is that our mothers read it and cite it. That's how you get a 1. Otherwise, nothing else gets cited, right? But the reason that the mobile communication journal was so highly cited is that it's a very small group. People know each other. They meet, they hold special meetings among themselves. And so, I know you, I know your work. I'm inclined to cite you. If I don't know you, it's harder, which is why also for some of you younger scholars, try to attend conferences. Just be visible. People know you. They're more likely to cite your work. So Rich Ling, the journal, Mobile.com, quite a new journal, has very high impact factor. In fact, it's very, very high if you look at it. Of course, it's a small number of articles, so it's not, in a way you could say, not really fair. But the point is that a smaller group, right? But Asia is so broad, as there's no discipline in Asia. We're just talking about Asia as a region. So I think if you're looking at a journal in Brazil, and especially if you're a language like Portuguese, then right away your target group of readers will be smaller. We also have a problem with getting reviewers. Right now I have 7 associate editors. I'm looking for more. The associate editors tell me that one of them, and they tell me that he finds that compared with other journals for which he's associate editor, the Asian Journal of Communication has a harder time getting reviewers. I can understand that because, again, there's no discipline, right? You're looking across the region. You're not looking at any particular discipline. So it is harder to get the reviewers for that reason. Our authors also tend to be young in a way because they are trying out. And again, you can understand because we are ranked lower. So people try the top tier journals, they don't get them in, and then they try something else. Then they try Asian, something done in Asia. Okay, we will publish, we'll consider. So we do get younger scholars coming in. I think that I mentioned with some of you who are younger scholars here. One of the things that you should do is to read the guide, the instructions to authors, because some of these are so young they don't read some of these things. They take it for granted. I had one case of a young scholar getting angry at me for not responding, to his article, and like he says I had sent him some comment, a favorable comment, and then after nothing. And I found that actually I had sent him a favorable comment. The article was with him. He needed to read it, send some revision, and send it back to me. And he had not done that. So he thought that by me giving him the favorable comment, it was done, and it wasn't done. He had to do some minor revision to it and send it back to me, and he hadn't done that. And being Asian, I think he was a bit embarrassed. And so although the article would have been accepted, I think he's not responding. Right? So there's some Asian, so you could say Asian cultural etiquette there. I had another scholar who was the article was ready to be accepted, had some revisions, but the senior author suddenly wanted to be the first author, right? And so they switched the order. The senior author came in, but the senior author, and this is a common problem in Asia, senior authors often are not as good in English as the younger authors. So in fact, when the senior author came in, the English became worse. It introduced errors, in fact, in the whole manuscript. So I wrote back to say, I said, you are introducing errors into this manuscript. It was better before. Again, I think this author was angry at me. It happens, by the way. If you are editor, I think Richard can tell stories of how you lose friends when you become an editor of a journal. I think this author, the senior author, was angry at me, and so the article is not sent back. I mean, he just kind of decided not to submit, I guess. Yeah. So we have some of these kind of concerns there. We do lose, I think, on this point about losing friends, we do lose friends because in the review, the reviews are not perfect. I think we should recognize that. And I think if you think that reviews are somehow very good, I think you are seriously mistaken. The first time I saw this was as a graduate student. It was a shock to me. I didn't expect it. I submitted to a conference, right, the ICA that I normally attend, and the reviewers were like 5, 5, and 1, right? Very good, top marks, and then 1, absolutely worst, right? So I'm like, how can this be, right? And since then, I've learned that sometimes what happens is that when an article is rejected by one conference or a journal, it can appear somewhere else and be very well liked and praised. So that the review system is not perfect. So what sometimes happens is that the reviewers come back with comments, and sometimes authors don't agree. But you just have to follow the review process. It cannot be helped. So I've told this person who was a friend of mine. I think he still is a friend of mine. Hope he still is anyway. A senior person, known him, talked to him, and so forth. And he got a little angry at me because I was listening to the reviewers. I told him, I have to listen to the reviewers, right? Because I'm going to use them. If I don't listen to the reviewers, why would they review for me? It is difficult to get reviewers. So, I have to respect the review process. So I think that in the end, he decided to withdraw the article. So I'm giving you some of these kind of issues that you probably have not seen or heard or talked about, but some of these kind of behind the scenes situation regarding the journal. I guess I will one more point and then I will stop. Because the journal has a lot of junior scholars. I'm trying to do a couple of things to help junior scholars. So one of them is a mentoring process where we try to help scholars with comments that are longer as opposed to shorter. So for example, in reviews, if you give a very short review, we might drop you from the review process, right? I've had reviewers like one sentence, like, then it's not really helpful, right? One sentence review. The editorial board consists of people who have promised, I've written them, promised to give at least, well, I would say 3 to 5 reviews a year. So far, most people do about maybe 3 at the most, not close to 5 even. And so if you're on an editorial board, you're expected to do some reviews. We started a process whereby if your article has got good methods, good data, okay, just as writing is weak, we will try to pair you with somebody to help you repackage your article. And you might want to think about it. You need some money ideally to pay the person, but this person did it for me as a favor. So we have one case so far, and looking for other cases. This person had, I thought, a good sort of angle for the research, had good methods, robust methods, good data. It was only writing that was weak, and so I paired him this person with a friend of mine in Australia, and then she helped him, and then they got online, and in the end he got published. So we're looking at mentoring younger scholars. I think there's something to think about if your group is you're seeing younger scholars come in. There's one more thing that I do, and that is that every article that comes through, I edit. I thought about it, and I think it's okay. It's not so bad, yeah. Because if I have 6 articles in 2 months, right? That's about slightly short of an article a week. If I spend even 3 hours, I think that's okay. And most of them won't spend 3 hours. But if I even spend 3 hours, then that's okay. And many of the authors appreciate that. And I've caught even some errors. They're not major, but still the errors in kind of embarrassing for the authors. So we're finding ways to help the junior scholars. So I'm going to end here. I've given you a very broad sweep regarding kind of the purpose of the journal, including the start with this Asian Media Information Communication Center, the NGO, starting the World Journalism Education Congress, and then the kind of angle that we look at, research on theories of communication, not practical industry-related matters, but academic matters, and the kind of audience that we have. Then, of course, has to be Asian, has to be communication, but tend to be younger, and so we try to help them develop as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop here now, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peng Wan. I think I'm out okay in here now. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk, because I could identify many things that we have in common. So we are closer than I could imagine about all the problems that we have.
Yes, I think so. Very common. Yes, I agree. I can sympathize. Yeah, really. Yeah, sure. Good. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I will talk more about that after. So now I will pass the floor to Richard Romancini. So thank you for being here today again, and you have the floor, please. You are muted. Acho que seu microfone está desativado, Richard.
Good morning, good evening. Rafael told me to give a more informal talk, but I do a PPT, and I will speak in Portuguese. So, bem, Matrizes é a revista do programa de pós-graduação da USP, e ela foi criada em 2007. Então já tem 15 anos, para abrigar estudos em comunicação em suas múltiplas dimensões, né? Quando Matrizes foi criada, ela surgiu com 2 inovações para a época, que é a publicação digital e a publicação bilíngue, né? Português e outra linguagem, e outro idioma. O Aidar, em outro encontro, falou que só inglês. Eu faço essa pequena correção. Às vezes nós publicamos português, espanhol, português, francês, português, italiano. Qual o foco de Matrizes? Matrizes quer publicar pesquisa teórica e empírica sobre os fenômenos de comunicação, de mídia, buscando, por assim dizer, uma pesquisa mais madura, inovadora, que expanda o estado da arte e do conhecimento e, portanto, possa ter algum impacto no campo, né? Matrizes, até o momento, publicou 34 números, sendo que de 2017 a 2015 foi uma revista semestral, e de 2016 até o momento ela é quadrimestral. Esses são os nossos números. Matrizes tem 4 principais seções: dossiê, em pauta, agenda, resenhas de livros, book reviews. Essas 3 possuem peer review. Entrevista não possui. Entrevista é o próprio comitê que avalia se aceitará a revista ou não. Grosso modo, a diferença entre o dossiê e o em pauta é que o dossiê procura textos, por assim dizer, mais teóricos, mais conceituais, né? E o em pauta, digamos assim, trabalhos mais analíticos de produtos midiáticos. Porém, eu mostrei aquelas sessões, elas não são válidas para os nossos números especiais. Matrizes fez, até o momento, 3 números especiais, e o próximo número que nós publicaremos também será um número especial, sobre Paulo Freire, né? Nós fizemos, até o momento, um número de tributo a Stuart Hall, um número sobre os 30 anos de Los Meios das Mediações, e um número sobre a chamada vertente matelar. Vale esclarecer como é que são feitas, concebidos esses números. Às vezes os pesquisadores entram em contato com um comitê editorial e propõem, e discutem, e às vezes é aceito, e em outros casos é o próprio comitê que concebe um número especial. Quem é o comitê editorial de Matrizes? São esses 8 pesquisadores, sendo que a fundadora é a diretora da revista também, Maria Imaculata. Temos também Ana Carolina, Isabel Ferran, de Portugal, Luciano Guimarães, também da USP, Maria Inês da EMB Morumbi, professor Raul Fuentes, do México, eu que sou editor executivo, e professora Roseli Fígaro, também da USP. O comitê editorial é, por assim dizer, a entidade que dá sequência ao trabalho, é o pessoal mais envolvido com a revista. Pois a revista também tem um conselho científico, mas quem acompanha o trabalho é esse comitê, que, como eu disse, tem se reunido mensalmente, agora via alguma plataforma digital, alguma coisa assim. Eu queria mostrar para você...
Richard, deixa eu só te dar... só pedir para você passar os slides, para a gente estar aparecendo ainda o mesmo primeiro. Se você puder colocar em tela cheia, melhor. Agora passou.
Agora foi?
Está passando os slides, mas ele ainda não está em tela cheia.
Não está em tela cheia?
Uhum.
Deixa eu ver.
Para ele não ficar tão pequenininho para a gente.
Deixa eu ver o que está acontecendo.
Isso, se você clicar aí.
Agora ficou em tela cheia? Ou não?
Estranhamente não está. Talvez tirar e pôr de novo o
Ok, vou fazer isso.
Para ver se ele carrega melhor.
Ok.
Strange, we have some very little problems here, technical problems, but we are coming back soon.
Melhorou? Isabela?
Oi,
ainda não?
Ainda não. Mas eu acho que, não sei, talvez seja uma configuração do computador. Talvez a gente possa continuar assim, mas só para você ir passando os slides, porque no primeiro momento não estava, mas agora está passando. Agora melhorou.
Melhorou?
Tá ótimo. Uhum.
Ok. Bom, como eu estava dizendo, o comitê editorial, ele cuida das funções principais da revista, né? E numa reunião típica do comitê editorial, nós vamos falar dos textos, mas também de uma série de assuntos. Eu estou mostrando para vocês um exemplo de uma pauta, no qual foi discutido um número especial, uma proposta de dossiê, mas é claro, o que demanda muito tempo nosso é realmente o acompanhamento das submissões e ver o estado em que cada uma delas está, para indicar novos pareceristas, ver o estado, ver se a revista vai aceitar, etc. É nesse sentido que esse diagrama aqui ajuda muito a entender o trabalho desse momento, né? Matriz, o autor faz a submissão, né, para a gente, e fazemos um primeiro momento de checagem desse texto, porque às vezes o autor esquece, deixa o nome, o que prejudica a revisão cega, ou então ele sobe um arquivo errado, depende de como for o pré-cheque, a gente volta para o autor, rejeita ou segue em frente. O desk review é justamente feito naquela reunião mensal da revista, ele vai examinar com mais atenção o texto para decidir se o texto cabe no escopo da revista e se deve ser mandado para pareceristas. Se a revista aceita, vai escolher os pareceristas e já vai mandar para eles. Os pareceristas farão a revisão e em algum momento vão encaminhá-las novamente para a revista, para os editores, que vão, a partir dessas avaliações, tomar a decisão editorial. Matriz é muito parecida com as revistas de maneira geral, ou seja, se temos 2 pareceres por aprovação, o texto é aprovado. Se temos um parecer por aprovação e um por não aprovação, o texto é mandado para um terceiro para fazer o desempate, coisas assim. Óbvio que também o revisor poderá fazer, condicionar a aprovação dele a aperfeiçoamentos, a mudanças, e isso a revista vai ficar acompanhando, né? Até que, enfim, um texto será não aprovado ou aceito. Uma vez que ele é aceito, Matrizes faz um primeiro trabalho textual no artigo. Depois, Matrizes é produzida por uma editora contratada que faz uma série de trabalhos nesse texto, em termos de aperfeiçoamento, tentar melhorar a qualidade, né? E uma vez que o texto esteja pronto, nós vamos solicitar que o autor providencie uma versão desse texto. Tudo vai depender do idioma que ele veio. Se ele veio em português, o autor vai fazer o texto em inglês. Depois ele nos manda esse texto. Isabela, quer falar alguma coisa?
Só te interromper um segundo. Não está passando de novo os slides. Só para você ir clicando do lado. A gente ainda está aqui no Editorial Committee.
Ok. Novamente, ainda no Editorial Committee?
Agora estamos no Editorial Process.
Que coisa. Bom, eu estava aqui nesse momento de a gente pensar no autor fazer a versão. Uma vez que ele nos manda a versão e os textos estão trabalhados, nós podemos diagramar o que a empresa fará. Uma vez que o texto está diagramado, nós voltamos para o autor fazer a leitura de prova, e finalmente está produzido. E em algum momento aqui nós vamos fazer o XML desse arquivo, que algumas bases de dados nos pedem. E vamos fazer a publicação. Numa etapa de pós-produção, nós vamos divulgar a revista em e-mails, listas de e-mail, mídia social. Fizemos no último número um lançamento, enfim. Então esse é mais ou menos o ciclo. Eu só queria...
Acho que se você passar, você clica na telinha do lado, isso.
Isso, ok.
Agora tá.
eu tenho a impressão que o sistema de revistas brasileiro melhorou muito nas últimas décadas, mas ele também é desafiado por questões, por entendimentos que implicam a revista se adaptar e tentar criar lógicas para trabalhar com isso. Então, por exemplo, vocês devem ter acompanhado aquela discussão se o texto de anais, já publicado em anais, é original ou não. Isso era algo que, há 10 anos atrás, nos colocava muito, né? Nós, em Matrizes, tendemos a entender que os eventos são uma etapa prévia à publicação em revistas, né? Então, um texto será alterado antes de ser enviado para uma revista. No entanto, para afirmar essa questão mais ainda, nós deixamos nas normas que os textos devem ser, se o autor publicou esse trabalho num livro de análise, ele deve nos explicar no que ele mudou para a revista pensar se vai ou não a publicá-lo, né? Nós também podemos publicar trabalhos que em outro idioma que não foram publicados em português, e o nível mínimo de titularidade do autor da submissão é doutorando, e no caso ele deve fazer a submissão junto com o autor-doutor. Matrizes usa atualmente a norma APA, e, enfim, os trabalhos têm que ser feitos nessas referências, né? Quando nós mandamos um texto para um revisor, o nosso formulário, ele pede para o revisor atentar para questões como a pertinência da pesquisa, a correção, a boa exposição da teórica, metodológica, e, em particular, o último ponto que tem nesse slide, que é a questão do caráter inovador e do potencial de impacto que esse texto possa ter para aderir à proposta da revista, né? Nós temos um guia ético, onde se explica que nós passamos os textos em software antiplágio como uma tarefa ética do editor. Procuramos não discriminar nenhum autor, todos os autores tendem a ter o mesmo tipo de processo editorial, sem nenhum tipo de discriminação, coisas desse tipo. Nossa política ética é um pouco mais ampla e contempla obrigações também para os autores e revisores, etc. Né? Aqui, Matriz até hoje publicou 404 artigos, 28 entrevistas, né? E tem uma tendência maior ao texto uniautoral quando a gente vai olhar os artigos. Foram 304 com um único autor. De onde vêm os textos que publicamos, né? Então, esse mapa aí mostra que, naturalmente, é uma revista brasileira, então publicamos muito mais pesquisadores locais, e, de certa maneira, autores, textos de proveniências nos quais temos dialogado mais, mas querendo ampliar isso, né? Para autores da Ásia, África, enfim, estamos abertos a textos de outros lugares. Aqui, até hoje, nós publicamos 400 diferentes autores, né? Esse mapa aí dá uma visualização dos autores que publicaram mais trabalhos na nossa revista. Qual as temáticas dos trabalhos. Eu tentei ver o sistema da revista, tentar pegar as palavras-chave, ele produz uma nuvenzinha de palavras, né? Então, questões como epistemologia, internet, televisão, acabam comunicação, claro, aparecem como temáticas fortes dos trabalhos, né? Aqui está o nosso fluxo editorial. Nós temos tido uma taxa de não aceite por volta de 60% nos últimos tempos, e com uma certa constância de originais recebidos por ano, nos últimos 4 anos, por volta de 100 originais recebidos, né? Aqui é a segunda tabela tem um detalhe interessante, que é o número de pareceristas que Matrizes mobilizou nos últimos tempos, né? Tem crescido em parte, pois nós temos evitado fazer com que um mesmo pesquisador dê muitos pareceres, então acaba ampliando. Eu estava vendo os encontros passados e estava notando que realmente a questão do parecer é um negócio, dos pareceristas é um negócio muito sério, pois eles são, de repente, o ponto que nós, editores, não controlamos, que faz, às vezes, com que um texto fique muito mais tempo do que a gente gostaria, pois nós não temos elementos para tomar uma decisão editorial. Esse é um ponto sempre de preocupação nossa, né? Nós vamos colocando pareceristas, mas não é fácil isso, não é fácil. Bom, Matrizes é publicada nessa licença Creative Commons, nos quais os autores podem compartilhar, tem muitas liberdades, né? Nós estamos nesses indicadores, nesses diretórios, Redalic, Doage, Besco, enfim, todo esse conjunto. Queremos muito ir para outros indexadores, pois um ponto difícil da revista é a questão do financiamento. Então, vocês devem ter notado que teve um edital há pouco que pedia para se a revista poderia estar na Web of Science, eu acho, e ela poderia pedir, assim, nós não nos faltava um indexador para poder pedir, uma pena. Tá? Aqui estão nossas estatísticas, né? Tem algo que me chamou muita atenção numa das conversas com editores passadas, é que alguém perguntou, será que vale a pena fazer bilíngue? Eu acho que nós podemos até ampliar essa pergunta. Como é que está, para pensar como é que está o nosso esforço, né? Em que medida o nosso esforço para fazer revistas frutifica, né? É complicado, você tem que pensar que indicadores você escolhe para pensar sobre isso, tal. Bom, é uma reflexão que temos que fazer, né? Eu acho que algo positivo em Matriz é o fato que ela tem muitos acessos, muita leitura, e infelizmente eu não consegui separar a quantas andaria o acesso de outros países além de maneira geral. Isso é uma curiosidade que eu tenho forte para saber se o nosso esforço de publicação bilíngue de repente está sendo efetivamente positivo, né? Aqui na tabela que tem em cima, eu estou comparando Matrizes com outras dois jornais, duas revistas científicas de comunicação que tem no portal USP, né? E daí nós temos mais acessos, e os outros jornais também são muito bons, né? Mas eles não são bilíngues. Talvez o bilinguismo ajude Matrizes a ter mais acesso. Isso é um ponto para se pensar. Aqui também tem um tempo, então Matrizes teve em outubro 18 mil arquivos acessados, e por fim aqui tem também os nossos artigos mais acessados, tem 37 mil downloads, enfim, são números acho que significativos, né? Bom, quase concluindo, Matrizes é apoiada por um programa de publicação científica da Universidade de São Paulo, no qual nós concorremos todo ano num edital, e também pelo programa de pós-graduação da Universidade de São Paulo. Esse programa permite manter, por exemplo, uma assistente editorial. Eu esqueci, isso é ruim. É muito importante ter um bom assistente editorial, e nós temos um estudante de graduação bastante competente. Isso ajuda bastante, né? Bastante recomendável. Nós estamos em alguns canais de mídia social, como Facebook, Instagram. Nosso e-mail é esse. E eu vou encerrar a minha fala com algumas observações, comentários pessoais, né? Eu acho que Matriz está num movimento de revistas brasileiras que tem melhorado continuamente, né? nós vamos falar em relação aos textos, em relação ao nosso trabalho, pensar em categorias como inovação e impacto, mas em relação aos textos, a opinião dos avaliadores é fundamental, pois a nossa área é muito grande, grande parte do que chega em matrizes eu teria dificuldade em saber se é um texto exatamente inovador, pensar qual o potencial dele alcançar uma larga audiência, de ser lido e ser significativo para tal determinada sub-área. Então, toda revista, eu acho que depende muito de bons revisores para pensar questões como inovação ou impacto, né? Eu acho que nós estamos avançando numa cultura de revistas científicas, mas podemos ainda avançar mais. Eu, quando estava fazendo doutorado, talvez o meu projeto de pesquisa não tenha citado nenhuma revista. Eu tenho curiosidade em saber se os atuais projetos de pesquisa dos nossos estudantes estão usando, em que medida a gente está usando as revistas. Isso é uma pergunta importante, pois nós, como editores, queremos ter um impacto legal no campo, queremos fazer coisas que realmente possam significar algo positivo, né? Bom, por fim, eu acho que é importante aprender com experiências de outros jornais, a gente está sempre muito atento a ver o que os colegas fazem. E é engraçado, às vezes tem coisas que a gente nem sabe onde a gente viu e por que começamos a fazer, mas estávamos atentos. Então, para dar um exemplo, Matrizes em mídia social procura dar uma atenção a cada artigo, fazendo uma postagem, divulgando, de modo que os nossos textos possam realmente atingir uma audiência um pouco maior, além do trabalho feito pelo próprio autor, né? Bom, era isso que eu tinha que falar a respeito do nosso jornal.
Muito obrigada, Richard. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think we have many things in common. I will make some comments on what you talked right now. So we face the same challenges and the same problems in some way. We have questions. We have the language is a point of concern for all of us. It's a question for us in Brazil, especially because we want to be inserted in this academic publication, international academic publication circuit, but also because we don't have, as Peng said, we don't have this culture. I mean, I think we also lack of discipline to be good reviewers, to, in fact, know how we can be more concerned about the editorial process, and also how we can be good peers to our colleagues, because it's the problem in Brazil. It's because it's a free work that we have to do, but we also want people to evaluate our papers. So I think we should do the same. So we have questions, we have great concerns about this with our editorial boards, too, with our scientific committees that we normally have here in Brazil. But it's very interesting to know that we face the same kind of problems, and being outside this mainstream publication, academic publication in the world. So I have some questions for you based on what you just presented to us, and then we'll have some questions from the audience. First of all, both of you talked about the attraction of international researchers to publish in the journal. So Richard just talked about that and showed us that we have lots of works coming from outside South America. And also we can see that in the Asian Journal of Communication, of course, because you are a Taylor and Francis product. So it's natural that you can attract more people around the world. So which is the actual impact of having these colleagues in a number of your publications? Do you think this helped you to circulate a bit more, to have a broader circulation in the academic world? And do you think it's imperative to a journal to make this kind of invitation to these specialists? Or do you have other strategies that are more effective to your aims, especially concerning your target market? So, Mr. Eng, could you start, please?
Okay, all right, sure. Thank you, sure. My apologies. So the only Portuguese words I know, obrigado. That's all I know.
No worries.
Right. So I caught some of it. Thank you, Richard, for your translation on the slides. I caught. I think that those that were translated. Okay, so it's different from me in some ways. Although I agree with Isabel, there are commonalities. But I think the one major difference is that I'm from Singapore. It's a very small place. If you drive 1 hour, you're into the sea already. Anyway, you drive 1 hour into the sea, right? Even if you drive slowly, you're still into the sea. So we're a small place. So we have to be international. To give an idea, I think you probably know that in the US, only 10% of Americans have got passports. In Singapore, it's the other way around. Fewer than 10% of Singaporeans do not have passports. Most people have passports. So my daughter started traveling when she was very young. I mean, before she went to kindergarten, started traveling already, right? So it's different. So we are almost by default international. And in a way, we're kind of trusted because we are small. So our smallness is an advantage in that we have no sort of Singapore research to promote. I mean, people may say that you're suspicious of Brazil because Brazil is big. You've actually, some of you may not even know that Brazil actually invented a chip to compete with the US Intel. Of course, much more expensive, but the point is that you could do that, right? In Singapore, you can't. It's just too small. So the scale that you have in Brazil, I mean, it's, in many ways advantageous. But in this narrow area, talking about, communication research, there's an advantage in that being small. People kind of trust us and that we're not out to promote our own agenda. What has allowed us to move up in terms of like ranking, for example, I would say, first of all, we are now under a commercial publisher. It was a difficult decision, I will tell you. I know that MATRIZes is open access and is free. But what it means is that, because we're academics, we're terrible at marketing, right? I mean, speaking for myself, I'm just terrible at marketing, right? But when we went with Taylor and Francis, they actually approached us first. We went with them. The non-profit organization got some money. In fact, the money is enough to support a 2-person salary. It's about 50,000 US, and the NGO moved from Singapore to the Philippines. So the money from the journal is supporting a 2-person, so that helps run the association. The readership right away went up. Once we had a commercial publisher, the readership went up because they were promoting it on the platform and so forth. I note that MATRIZes is on EBSCO, which should be international in reach. We got EBSCO in Singapore also, but I don't know to what extent you have that kind of reach. And also, of course, the language. But a commercial publisher made a difference. The other one that made a difference is that special issues. And I know this because, in fact, there's one kind of sort of competing. I know we're friends, but we compete on a friendly basis. The Chinese Journal of Communication, when it came out, they introduced special issues, and that certainly helped the readership. So it took the Asian Journal of Communication about 20 years to get into SSCI, the Social Science Citation Index. That once you get, so what happens is that all over the world, universities want their faculty to publish only in SSCI journals, because then their works are in the favored list, and so are more likely to be cited. And citation, as you know, is a currency. The more you cited, sort of the more prestigious you are. So many universities want their faculty to be published on SSCI. So special issues increase citations. More people look at special issues. So in fact, I tried to get it going. It took a while, but this year we have our first special issue under my editorship. Taken me, started in 2000, so about more than a year to get a special issue out. But now I have 3 special issues lined up. And the special issues, so let me tell you the special issues. The one that is on is about a pandemic. And maybe you could think of one for the pandemic in Brazil, or I know it's the Portuguese Commonwealth, and see how there's some common factors that would be useful to research. So there's one about a pandemic, one about platform governance, which is big now. As you know, the Facebook is facing issues, so talking about governance of the platforms. One on freedom of expression. And actually, I wanted that first, but unfortunately, one of the guest editors had a wife pass away. So, that really he was badly affected. And so that held up. So, okay, yeah, let's hold off for that. But one is freedom of expression. And then one more that's coming up about polarization. So current issues. And in fact, one I'm developing is about Islamic communication. And part of it is to sort of demystify what people think about, Islamic work. So just give an idea of how to me, interesting Islamic communication research is. In Islamic universities, and there are a few of these all over the world, communication is parked under evangelism. So they view evangelism, communication, as a way to spread Islam. But that's not all that communication does. We look at ourselves. We don't just kind of spread a message. So it's kind of interesting there. One of and what caused me to have this spark is that I met this person who is the dean of a communication school in Indonesia, in an Islamic university. And he was extremely critical of the current president, Jokowi in Indonesia. Very nice guy, very nice man. Like he came to Singapore on his own private business. His son studied in Singapore, so he came to visit his son who's graduating. And remember now, the president of Indonesia coming to Singapore, private visit, he traveled economy, right? So, I mean, he's, very self-effacing man, and, you could say it's symbolic, whatever, but still, he was traveling. I mean, I think I travel business at least, right? I mean, it's quite painful at my age suddenly to travel economy sometimes. Short plane ride, but still travel economy. So I thought, oh, Jokowi, nice guy. But this dean of this Islamic university was very critical. But the more I spoke to him, I realized that he was very serious, and Islam was giving him kind of the moral basis for criticizing government, right? Because you have an ethics in religion, so therefore you feel that you are sure about what you're criticizing on against. So he was using religion, using journalism ethics, and criticizing what was happening in Indonesia. So I've asked him to kind of guest edit somebody else. This special issue, it will be more than a year away. But looking at Islamic communication, I think that issue will be well read by people, and it's a way. Again, I'm looking at ways to get people to read the journal more and really to promote our Asian scholars. So that is some ways that we've pursued to broaden and internationalize the journal further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peng. So, Richard, I think I have the same question for you, and I'm going to add the question of Luisa, who's asking how was the process of internationalization of MATRIZes? Because I think it's very connected to this question and very connected to this process of publishing in other languages and attracting people from other regions in the world to publish em MATRIZes.
Sim, certamente. Mas ponto que eu colocaria é que as revistas não estão descoladas do sistema científico. Se nosso sistema deseja dialogar com os colegas, ele se internacionaliza. Se não, isso não se coloca tanto como uma questão importante. Porque até, em particular, nós primeiros tivemos que construir um sistema nacional de pós-graduação, de pesquisa em comunicação. Eu acho que, a partir desse momento mais consolidado, os nossos autores vão buscar parcerias com colegas internacionais em pesquisas, em trabalhos, e isso obriga as revistas a se internacionalizarem, porque são os nossos pesquisadores que estão com esse tipo de prática, né? MATRIZes já nasceu com essa ideia de, mas como é que se diz? Mas é porque eu acho que o que se colocava da nossa base de pesquisadores buscando esse caminho, né, de maior visibilidade internacional, de maior diálogo com os colegas, que, no fim das contas, a ideia da internacionalização é a gente poder aperfeiçoar a pesquisa, né, ao dialogar com as pessoas do mundo todo.
Obrigada. Você concluiu, Richard?
Sim.
Obrigada, muito obrigada. Thank you very much. So I think we have 1 hour of conversation right now. I think we are going to start to finish this conversation, but I would like to, as I see that MATRIZes don't have people from Asia publishing in the journal, it's a question, it's a point that I would like to highlight. And in your final considerations, I would like to ask you, what do you think that we could do as researchers in different poles of the planet? How could we start to get closer of to our researchers? Because we have the same challenges. When Peng said that the theories from the West don't fit in our cases, it's a good question. It's a good point for us to reflect on. So I think I would like to hear from you how to make bridges, to construct bridges between our researchers and to publish in journals that could bring together the two regions. So, Mr. Peng, could you start, please?
Oh, okay. My view is that for such methods, it has to be organic. I looked at this issue when I was running the school, and I found that if you try to force it, it does not work. It really has to be organic, meaning that, researchers doing work with other researchers. It cannot be forced by the dean or even the university president. At most, it may carry on for a while, but after that, it will die. So you need some ways to have this happen. I noticed that in your journal, you have Joseph Stropha, who is on your, I guess, some authors. Joseph Stropha from now he's at UT Austin, speaks Portuguese, I know. He was on my committee for my PhD. And when I meet him for a conference, I will buy him a lunch or something, and we'll meet and then talk, yeah. And he's visited my school as an endowed professor. So if you have someone like him who comes through, then there's a way to form a bridge. Brazil is just very far from Singapore. It's about 33 hours, and I've done that. I've gone to Rio. Your food is fabulous. I have a lot of bossa nova music that I like, right? Sao Paulo also is good. The Japanese food at Sao Paulo is fabulous. I've tried the Japanese food with the olive oil and mint. Yeah, it's great. First time I tried it. Wow, okay. Been to João Pessoa for the conference. If there are some areas, for example, the one that I was at João Pessoa was Internet Governance Forum. And again, I don't know if you some of you probably would not know, but Brazil played a very big role in developing some principles around internet governance after Edward Snowden, and the President of Brazil had a big part to play there as well. So if there's some ways for some research to happen organically, I think that would be a way around it. I will add, though, that I noticed from the journal I was looking through quickly, you tend to do qualitative work. The American journals tend to do quantitative work. It is easier to get published quantitative. I know, Richard, I admire you for your qualitative work. Like, hats off to you. It's very tough work to do. But I noticed a lot of our scholars do that. The quantitative work it's easier to write more because it's just the surveys, and just write the surveys and cite them more. So I'm moving the journal a little bit more in that sense, away from the qualitative, because I get a lot also of qualitative work. But in terms of being cited, being out there, the quantitative work does make some difference. So I know that I'm sort of betraying the Asian side, but it's, again, some way of getting the work sort of more recognized and more used.
Yeah, I do agree. I think we need this approach, this approach in our journals. Thank you very much, Mr. Peng. And Richard, your final words and some thoughts about that.
Eu tenho boa notícia. Naquele mapa nós vamos pintar mais alguns países. Publicaremos autor da África e da Ásia, Filipinas. Isso é interessante em relação a essa informação, é que, como o Peng falou também, os números especiais, quando eles têm a capacidade de colocar uma conversa global sobre um tema que pesquisadores do mundo todo então, tem interesse. Isso, é por isso que nosso próximo número é sobre Paulo Freire, haverá um autor da África, da Ásia, enfim, então eu também, para encerrar, fico feliz em nossa revista estar conseguindo entrar, colher mais contribuições dos colegas de todo mundo, né? E agradeço a oportunidade de estar explicando aqui um pouco o que é a nossa revista e convido a todos a submeterem artigos, né?
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, so thank you very much, both of you, for this fruitful conversation, even though it was a kind of bilingual conversation, as it should be ever around the world. But for you, I'm switching languages now just to talk to our audience. So, para vocês que estão assistindo a gente, essa conversa vai ficar um pouco menos complicada posteriormente, porque ela vai ficar salva no YouTube da Compós, e vocês vão ver as legendas sobre essa conversa toda, né? Tanto Mr. Eng can see this conversation, the subtitles in English after that, e vocês também podem ver as legendas do que foi conversado em inglês aqui, legendas em português, no YouTube da Compós, no canal da Compós, depois que ela fica salva aí. Então, muito obrigada pela audiência de vocês, obrigada pelas perguntas, obrigada por participarem. Em nome da Compós, eu agradeço a todos e todas que estão aqui presentes. Novamente, agradeço aos convidados. Foi uma conversa, de fato, muito boa para a gente pensar em todos esses desafios e nas aproximações e nas diferenças que nós temos entre essas nossas duas regiões, mas que parece que a gente tem muito mais o que conversar do que desconversar nesse sentido. So, thank you very much again, both of you, Richard and Peng. E até a próxima, pessoal. Uma boa tarde a todos. Good evening, Mr. Eng.
Okay, thank you, and have a good day. Right.